exploring everywhere, no map, no reverse. Oh, dig a 420, curious Canuck. Answers on your mind, never getting stuck. Riding waves of stars through the cosmic sea, finding who we are in the galaxy. She's got questions to ask and a fire that won't die, unraveling each task under the sky. Oh, dig a 420, curious Canuck. Answers on your mind, never getting stuck. Riding waves of stars through the cosmic sea, finding who we are in the galaxy. She's got questions to ask and a fire that won't die, unraveling each task under the sky.
Hi, guys and girls, kids, children, folks. Hello, everyone. That was the wrong entry clip that I updated, so it ended shortly, or it ended too soon and rather abruptly. But that's okay. I'll fiddle with it again. I love the song. I just can't get it to start and end quite right. Hello, Gemstone. How you doing? Hi there, King Kong. Good to see you. It is another rainy, wet, gross Wednesday morning here in BC. I don't know if you guys are overly interested or not, but my buddy Mighty was covering the UAP thing with the Senate. They're talking about aliens, and they actually acknowledged for the first time in public that Roswell did in fact happen. They did in fact have a biological living alien with them for a time. That was about all I caught. The rest of it was basically a nothing burger. Named a couple of names, that sort of thing. But they acknowledged just enough to keep people coming back, which I guess is the way you do things, right? With TV shows, you want them to come back, so you leave them with a cliffhanger. Well, after almost, well, what is it, 80 years? Just over or just under 80 years since Roswell happened. They still haven't declassified a lot of the stuff. So the fact that they actually, A, admitted that it happened, and B, admitted that EBE, the biologic alien, was in fact discovered, that's pretty huge. That being said, I have my own opinion on aliens and what we're seeing, and all of that, but that's a whole other discussion for a whole other day. And oh, okay, that's just sweets making noise. Okay, good. But yeah, I just thought it was very interesting, since last week we read about aliens, and then all of a sudden, just before today's episode starts, they're doing the UAP Senate committee questioning. So I don't know. I thought that was pretty cool. I dropped some stuff in the chat there, so anyone who wants to, oh, I guess it's Rumble. You can't go back and look at the chat, but if you really want to know what the two had together, you can go back and watch my video from last week, and then you'll figure it all out. That being said, I forgot to put the sources in from last week's chapter 12, so I will do that when I get off today. We are actually almost at the halfway mark for this book, so that's pretty cool. Today is chapter 13 from Behold a Pale Horse. It's first published in 1991, so remember, if it sounds like he's talking about something in present times, He was, we're not. So a lot of the people in the positions are no longer there now, but it gives us a really great idea of how we got to where we are. Chapter 13 today is called Treason in High Places. Yes, this will be a good one, guys. Treason in High Places, the United Nations Treaty and the United Nations Participation Act versus the sovereignty of the United States of America. So this will be a big one. The quote is, at the conclusion of the Constitutional Convention in September 1787, Benjamin Franklin was asked, "What have you wrought?" And he answered, "A republic, if you can keep it." And that's the key, if you can keep it. So I'm going to be smart. I'm going to take a sip of coffee before I start reading. And when the stream's done today, I will, like I said, I'll update. Okay, there are no sources for this chapter. So I will update last chapter as soon as we're done here. And then I totally lose my page. It's a good thing we're just starting. There we go. There's a crack right down the middle of this book, so it makes it very hard getting closer to it to not just keep flipping to it. So here we go. The United States Constitution, Article 6. All debts contracted and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be as valid against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation. This Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. The senators and representatives before mentioned, and the members of the several state legislatures, and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution, but no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. So there you go. We have 3 separate arms of your government that all work independently to ensure that they are all working correctly. Sweets has got the zoomies right now, it looks like. But above and before all of it, religion shall be kept separate. And I know that you guys are starting to see a lot of stuff in your courts right now about God in church. Yeah, she's having fun over there. I forgot to turn on the lights. No wonder it's dark in here. So here we go. Have we already joined a one world government? U.S. sovereignty, fact or fiction? The executive, judicial, and legislative branches of the U.S. government have followed the policy that the United Nations Treaty approved under the UN Participation Act of 1945 in behalf of the United States of America by Harry S. Truman and the United States Senate, which treaty supersedes the United States Constitution. Do you hear that? This treaty supersedes the United States Constitution under the terms of Article 6 of the United States Constitution. The Council of Foreign Relations created the United Nations. Their member agents, Alger Hiss and Leo Pasvolsky, did the paperwork. but the honors went to a special committee appointed by President Roosevelt to draw the first draft of the charter. The members of the committee were Sumner Wells, Isaiah Bowman, Hamilton Fish Armstrong, Benjamin Cohen, and Clark Eschelberger, all members of the Council on Foreign Relations and members of a secret order of the quest called the Jason Society. The charter was rushed through the U.S. Senate without printed copies to guide the senators. It was explained to them by Russian-born revolutionary Leo Pavlovsky. The charter conferred no real power to the General Assembly. All the power was in the Security Council where the veto was. The Senate would not have try that one again. The Senate would not have ratified the charter except that the American delegation had the right to veto if our interests were threatened by action of other members. Included in this charter was and is Article 25. Member nations agree to accept and carry out the decisions of the Security Council in accordance with the present charter. No restrictions, no reservations. This is all of Article 25. Note the word present, indicating that there might be other charters. The veto was a hindrance to world government, and it had to be circumvented. In 1950, the General Assembly, without any legal authority, met and adopted what they named the Uniting for Peace Resolution. This, greatly expanded since that time, permitted the General Assembly to exercise the powers of the Security Council. I bet you didn't know that. The government of the United States recognizes the illegally amended charter as the law of the world, overriding our Constitution. The General Assembly has for years been making the law of the world by ratifying resolutions by a 2/3 majority vote. When the resolution is ratified, it is sent down to the chief executive of the member state, and the executive is obliged to accept and carry out the provisions in the resolution. Just to stop there, Canada has the same sort of agreements. We don't have a veto, which means that whatever these people decide, we have to do. That's our military, our government, everything. You guys at the very least have the veto, but that's only useful if the people that you put in charge here are willing to use it and aren't a part of the whole, bigger authority global agenda. So, the governments concerned must ignore, abolish, revise, and rescind laws in their territories which conflict with the resolutions of the General Assembly, and to pass other laws which will put these resolutions into force. One man, one vote comes through resolution number 1760. There are more than 2,000 of these resolutions now in effect as of 1991. They are the law of the land. Our civil rights laws, the ex post facto sections of which come from the Nuremberg resolutions, our agricultural laws, our health and welfare laws, our labor laws, our foreign aid laws, all come from resolutions of the General Assembly or treaties of the UN ratified by our Senate. Just another quick aside, my province, British Columbia, recently, I'd say 5-6 months ago, I think, they passed Bill 31, which is part of the UN agenda, and next time the Canadian government declares a national emergency of any sort, that automatically relinquishes power to the UN, who can then come into BC and take whatever they want, land, buildings, cattle, your agriculture, you name it. They can come in, they can take it, and they do not have to repay you for any of it, and it's just theirs because of the national emergency, which gave the UN the law to do this. So I know it was passed in BC. I am sure there are other ones going through or who have already been passed in the other provinces of my country. And you can guarantee that they have similar bills written in all the other countries that are members of the UN. Um, so yeah, at this point in 2024, even our own governments have written it out so that the UN has power over our own governments, which doesn't sound right at all. Any law passed in your state will be rescinded or abolished if it is in conflict with the resolutions of the General Assembly. I can tell you with no reservations whatsoever that all of the intelligence organizations of the United States work directly for the United Nations, in concert with the secret government, towards the sole purpose of the destruction of the sovereignty of the United States of America and the bringing about of the one world government. The authority cited for their efforts is Article 6 of the Constitution, the United Nations Treaty, and the UN Participation Act of 1945, signed by Harry S. Truman, with the advice and consent of the U.S. Senate. This should help you understand that our laws are being made and who is making them. This should help you understand how our laws are being made and who is making them. Ask your senators, congressmen, and state legislators if they are aware of these facts. Now in 2024, most of them probably have no idea that any of this stuff has been passed or is going on. A lot of the senators and congressmen and women probably have no idea just how much control the UN has over the United States of America. And it's got even more control over all the rest of us member states. So, Congressional Record, page A3220, statement of Carl B. Ricks, R-I-X, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I appear in favor of the amendments. Congress is no longer bound by its constitutional system of delegated powers. Its only test is under the obligatory power to promote human rights in these fields of endeavor: civil, political, economic, social, and cultural. These are found in Articles 55 and 56 of the Charter of the United Nations, are a ratified and approved treaty. They are being promoted in all parts of the world by the United Nations. Congress may now legislate as an uninhibited body with no shackles or delegated powers under the Constitution. Our entire system of a government of delegated powers of Congress has been changed to a system of undelegated powers without amendment by the people of the United States. The authority for these statements is found in a volume entitled Constitution of the United States of America, annotated, issued in 1953, prepared under the direction of the Judiciary Committee of the Senate of the United States, and under the chairmanship of Professor Edward S. Corwin of Princeton, aided by the legal staff at the Library of Congress. This is the conclusion on page 427 of the annotations. In a word, the treaty power cannot purport to amend the Constitution by adding to the list of Congress's enumerated powers, but having acted, the consequence will often be that it has provided Congress with an opportunity to enact measures which, independently of a treaty, Congress could not pass, and the only question that can be raised as to such measures will be whether they are necessary and proper measures for carrying out the treaty in question into operation. It will be noted that one of the principal cases cited is that of the migratory bird case. These conclusions are those also of a committee of New York State Bar Association, of which former Attorney General Mitchell and Mr. John W. Davies were prominent members. Now, for some practical illustration of newfound powers under treaties of what Congress may do. 1. It may enact a comprehensive education bill providing for education in any state which does not provide it. In fact, it may take over all public education now provided by states and municipalities. I think that one got passed, did it not? 2. It may enact a Prohibition Act without an amendment of the Constitution. 3. It may enact a Uniform Divorce Act. 4. It may take over all social and welfare services rendered by or through the states or their agencies. 5. It may take over all commerce, all utility rates and service, all labor. The list may be multiplied extensively at your will. The new test of constitutionality will apply to all legislation by Congress since 1945, which deals with any of the 5 fields of endeavor. Any judge deciding on the validity of legislation must have 2 books before him. One, the Constitution of the United States, and the other, the Charter of the United Nations. If he does not find authority for the act in the Constitution, he will find it in the Charter. That is the exact situation in which Justice Holmes found himself and the other members of the Supreme Court when they decided the migratory bird case. The authority was not found in the Constitution. It was found in the treaty with Great Britain. The question to be answered is this: under which form of government do the people of the United States prefer to live? Manifestly, we cannot operate under both. Senators, the people of the United States have given up their sons. They have given up billions of their substance. They should not be the only nation in the world to give up their form of government, the wonder of the world, to discharge their obligations to the people of the world. The Bricker Amendment, which would have changed this, was not passed. Now I'm going to read a letter to the editor. Borger, Texas News Herald, Sunday, November 11th, 1962. Dear Mr. Newsby, replying to your letter October 12th, also challenged for November 1961, quoting Patrick Henry on treaties. In the first place, Patrick Henry was and is no authority on either treaties or the Constitution, and he opposed it. If it is too late to do anything about reinstating our Constitution, then why not just accept the traitorous UN Charter treaties without more ado? Why didn't the American revolutionists think it too late or too difficult to defend their liberty? And if the highly intelligent framers of the Constitution were well aware of the death trap incorporated in Article 6, why then did they so frame it? Did they not expect patriots rather than treasonists as our elected officials to honor and enforce the spirit, letter, and intent of the Constitution? I note you say that according to a law dictionary, the terms legal and lawful are almost one and the same. Agreed. Almost, but not quite. I believe there is a fine point of difference. Taking us into the UN may seem to be done legally by the President and Senate, but the act is still unlawful because it is unconstitutional, and the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. All renowned and genuine constitutional experts, such as Thos M. Cooley, Thos Jas Norton, and Harry Atwood, to name several. I think Thos is an honorary, like judge, but it's an abbreviated honorary, and I'm not sure what it is. So Miss M. Cooley, Jas Norton, and Harry Atwood, to name several, have always held that anything which contravenes, diminishes, or perverts the Constitution is null and void and of no effect. Neither the President nor the Senate has authority or power to change, diminish, or destroy the Constitution by usurpation, treaty, or otherwise. Only a constitutional amendment can lawfully change it. The Constitution is a contract that we, the people of the USA, made with one another, which sets up the machinery of government to carry out this contract, mainly for the purpose of protecting individual rights as well as state rights against the powers of government. And no public official has a right to override the provisions of that contract. To quote Jas Norton's Constitution of the United States, its application, etc., A law of Congress to be one of the supreme laws must be made in pursuance of and not in conflict with the Constitution. When not made in pursuance thereof, it is of course unconstitutional and of no effect. And the same would similarly apply to a wonderful decision rendered by the Supreme Court or an unlawful treaty. And from Norton's Undermining the Constitution, which quotes Alexander Hamilton in number 33 of the Federalist, it will not, I presume, have escaped observation that it expressly confines the supremacy of laws made pursuant to the Constitution. And from page 21, the general government can claim no powers which are not granted to it by the Constitution, and the powers actually granted must be such as are expressly given or given by necessary implication. Anyone with presumed intelligence to be President of the USA must know that he cannot lawfully make any such far-reaching treaty with the United Nations or any other foreign power as you envision by your language, without laying himself open to the charge of treason under Article 3, Section 3 of the Constitution. Just ordinary common sense is required to know that our alleged treaty with the UN and acceptance of the all-inclusive terms of its charter by our presidents, beginning with FDR, who connived with Stalin at Yalta for the setting up of the UN in the USA, and our Senate, is a violation of their sacred oath of office as per Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution. Such a treaty makes a mockery of any genuine allegiance to our flag and Constitution. A genuine American, Abraham Lincoln, said, "Worse than traitors in arms are the men who, pretending loyalty to the flag, feast and fatten on the misfortunes of the nation." Think of any truth more applicable in the present time. And again, that was 91. This is 2024, and it's just as applicable. A number of our officials, including former Secretary of State Dean Acheson, the late John Foster Dulles, and members of our present One World Kennedy entourage, go along with the statement that the USA now has no domestic affairs. There has been a melding of our domestic and foreign affairs. And meld means to merge. Katanga province in the Congo thought she had some private affairs and rights, but the UN soon disillusioned her. Quote from SL Tribune for September 14th, 1961. UN soldiers take over Katanga. UN troops seized Katanga's capital, Elizabethville, in a brisk battle Wednesday, and the Congo's central government proclaimed the return of that secessionist province. There is no doubt that the President of the USA and Senate have surrendered certain of our rights and sovereignty to the UN and plan still more. Any informed American is aware that Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution automatically cancels out any allegiance to the UN and its alien one world internationalism, the antithesis. And now I lost my spot. The antithesis of constitutional Americanism founded on Washington's no foreign entanglements. And that said Republican representative form of government is the exact opposite of the UN Charter's Soviet-initiated modifications, restrictions, and reservations in its various conventions, which would nullify our Bill of Rights. Stalin, his protege Alger Hiss, and Russian communist Pavlovsky figured largely in the writing of the UN Charter. To assume that heterogeneous... Holy Hannah, he's throwing me big words first thing in the morning. All right. I'm just going to start at the back of that last. Any informed American is aware that Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution automatically cancels out any allegiance to the UN and its alien one world internationalism, the antithesis of constitutional Americanism founded on Washington's no foreign entanglements. And that said Republican representative, holy Hannah, I'm having a hard time this morning, eh? And that said Republican representative form of government is the exact opposite of the UN Charter's Soviet-initiated modifications, restrictions, and reservations in its various conventions, which would nullify our Bill of Rights. Stalin, his protege Alger Russian communist Pavlovsky figured largely in the writing of the UN Charter. To assume that a heterogeneous body composed of appointed representatives of foreign governments, some crude cannibalistic so-called states, and others from virulently atheistic communist states, which governments do not represent we the American people, could exercise dictation and control over U.S. is monstrous in the extreme. Lawfully or constitutionally, they may not enforce any provisions of the UN Charter against us or take any action whatever affecting the sovereign rights of American citizens. Further, the United Nations is not a lawful government in the accepted sense of the term, and is not a proper body with which to make a treaty. Actually, the UN has no valid binding treaty-making power, except as the subversive one-worlders try to make it so. Quoting Norton's Constitution of the United States at page 14, a treaty is a written contract between two governments, not a motley assembly of unstable tribes or enslaved peoples calling themselves a government, respecting matters of mutual welfare, such as peace, the acquisition of territory, the defining of boundaries, the needs of trade, rights of citizenship, etc. And such treaties, even though legally made, may be abrogated for cause. Quoting Ibid, page 115, a precedent for thus abrogating a treaty made by the President and approved by the Senate may be found as far back as July 7th, 1789, when Congress passed an act to declare the treaties heretofore concluded with France no longer obligatory on the United States because they have been repeatedly violated on the part of the French government. So what about all the violations of the treaties or agreements made by the USSR, which dominates the UN? The USA is vastly outvoted and in this motley aggregation called the United Nations, even as American taxpayers foot most of the bills, which constitutes constitutionally forbidden confiscation of the citizens' money or property without just compensation therefor. This is merely communistic confiscation, which is what Bill 31 did in BC for the UN. A treaty made pursuant to the Constitution becomes a part of the law of the land and should be honored, but it does not become supreme or take precedence over nor supersede the Constitution. It is not the law of the land standing alone, and no treaty or executive agreement is binding on the USA if made by the President alone, as has been done, with the advice and consent of the Senate, nor if it violates the Constitution. Actually, Article 6, instead of setting treaties on high or being a death trap, is a statement of the supremacy of the Constitution and of the national government. Lawful treaties are a part of, but not, lawful treaties are a part of, but subordinate to, the Constitution for the simple stated provision therein that all laws and treaties must be made in pursuance thereof. Can the creature or a part become greater than its creator or the whole? Some American common sense is necessary in all this blather about the supremacy of treaties, which is promulgated largely by the one-worlders to discredit or diminish the Constitution so they can achieve their own ends. The language and intent of the Constitution and of Article 6 is clear and forthright, and does not admit in good faith of any other interpretation. But sadly enough, it is well known that many of our highest judiciary and elected officials in this era of treason, not reason, do not act in good faith nor in pursuance of the Constitution. With reference to the fourth paragraph in your letter October 12th, Mr. Newby, that the making of treaties is without limitation, exception, or reservation, and that no treaty has ever been declared unconstitutional or invalidated or repealed by the courts or Congress in the history of this nation, I think that the foregoing invalidates your statement. And as to Article 6 being a death trap over which the Constitution gives no control or remedy other than its explicit language in 6 regarding the law and treaties, has it occurred to you that the Supreme Court has power and authority to rule on the constitutionality of treaties the same as on the constitutionality of any other law? Treaties being merely part of the law of the land? Article 3, Section 2 explicitly states the judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution, the laws of the United States, and treaties made, or which shall be made, under their authority. To quote Norton's Constitution of the United States, page 137, when a case arises in a state court and involves a question of the Constitution, or an act of Congress, or a treaty, it is the duty of the court to follow and enforce the national constitutional law. For the Constitution explicitly and emphatically requires that the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. Any time that the President and Senate make a treaty with a foreign power, such as the UN, which infringes upon or abrogates rights guaranteed to citizens of the USA under the Constitution, the Supreme Court can declare such treaty unconstitutional, void, and of no effect. Of course, the present Supreme Court, being composed of political radicals rather than judicial constitutional experts, is not likely to take such action unless forced to do so by public opinion and demand. And so, with reference to your statement in printed challenge for November 1961, to the effect that under Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2 of the Constitution, such treaty as with the UN can be made without restriction, limitation, exception, or reservation, irrespective of the fact that it contravenes, violates, infringes, or alienates every article of the Constitution. All that is necessary is for the President and Senate to ratify any treaty, and it is in force. The above article and clause likewise does not stand alone, but must be construed in the light of the entire Constitution. Your interpretation is not only to make idiots of the founding fathers and framers of Constitution, but to say that regardless of the solemn presidential oath of allegiance required by Article 3, Section 2A, regardless of the supreme sovereignty of the U.S. Constitution, and in violation of the explicit language contained in Article 6, i.e., this Constitution, and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties under the authority of the United States, as well as all authoritative rulings by genuine constitutional authorities to the effect that anything which contravenes the Constitution of the USA is null and void, including any such acts by Congress, despite all of the foregoing. I reiterate that your interpretation would claim that there is absolutely no constitutional safeguard for the American people against treasonous treaties, which gives aid and comfort to our enemies, as per Article 3, Section 3. Your interpretation would give complete immunity to the maker of such treaties and would constitute changing the Constitution by usurpation, in violation of the intent, spirit, and letter of the Constitution as a whole. The President obviously is not a free agent by virtue of Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2, to make any sort of treaty he would like, but is bound down by the chains of the entire Constitution. Nothing else makes any sense. His treaty-making acts are subject to review by the courts. True, we should demand rescinding the action by both Senate and Harry S. Truman in signing the UN Participation Act of 1945 in behalf of the USA. This would put the world on notice that we were once more honoring our own Constitution, our Charter of Freedom, as the supreme law of the land, and reinstating it to its former proper supreme position, as well as claiming our sovereignty as the independent republic in accordance with our Declaration of Independence. There is not, nor ever will be, any true peace, freedom, safety, or security for the American people under the alien UN Charter. There is no substitute for American independence. Many men have died and worms have eaten them for a far lesser cause. And so, Mr. Newby, you and I do have one primary objective in view. Get the U.S. out of the UN and the subversive UN out of the USA. Most sincerely yours, Marilyn R. Allen. This is the author's note. I guess that just about covers the UN Charter versus the U.S. sovereignty hoax. No one should ever be able to bullshit you on this issue again. Your job now is to make sure your congressmen and senators are educated on this issue. Get to work now. Hello, Dom. Yes, I'm here. Hello, how you doing, hon? Oh, Chris was asking. He was confused. Dom is our one of our silly guys. He likes to crack wise. Yeah, Dom said, Crispy, if you were questioning my question, I'm just giving Digger a hard time. I'm looking right at her on screen. Sometimes I tease her and make her think there's a technical difficulty with the broadcast. Yes, he does. He's good at it. And Chris is laughing. He understands and thinks it's cool. So there you go. That was another very, very short chapter. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Anything about that? I mean, I think it's pretty clear. In order to sign that UN treaty, both the president and the Senate had to do exactly that. They had to usurp the Constitution of the United States and basically give the UN more power than your Constitution. And it has been that way ever since. So you guys got to go. You got work to do. You got some work to do, you people. You've got to go and start talking to your senators. Start talking to your MPs if you're over here in Britain. Because the States isn't the only one. It's just the only one where they had to actually usurp a country's sovereignty, because the rest of us don't have such safeguards in place. Crispy, the United Nations are communist bastards and unconstitutional. 100% correct. Problem is, well, for example, here in Canada, we don't have a constitution. And thanks to that, or because of that, a lot of Canada doesn't belong to Canada, isn't under control of Canada. I mean, it looks like it is, but like I said, the second the Canadian government decides to claim another national emergency, the UN has legal right to come into my province, and I'm sure there was one signed or in the midst of being signed in all the other provinces, that give the UN the right to come in and just take over, full force, full stop. They can take whatever land or property they want. They do not have to remunerate the owners of said land or property ever, and they just take control. And that means the next time the national emergency is over, the stuff the UN took control of is still under the control of the UN. So suddenly we're going to have a whole huge swath of Canada that are now being run by UN law as opposed to Canadian law. You guys in the States, you're a little bit different because they built, pardon me, they built in safeguards for you. However, when you have one world order people as your president and in your Congress and Senate, they can go around it if they need to. And that's what they did. They bent it and twisted it and worked their way around it. And they've got a lot more control and power over your country than you guys would ever imagine. So we've, again, I mean, from my perspective here in Canada, if we could just fire everyone, if we could fire everyone, rebuild, sure, let's have the same number of seats in our house, but we need to get rid of them all and start fresh. You guys have it slightly different. A lot of the people who are in control of your government right now don't realize just how little the Constitution, how little power the Constitution has when it comes to the UN. They have been usurping your Constitution for the UN for decades. And again, this was written in 91, so imagine just how much more has been usurped since then. Looking at the people you've had as presidents in the recent history. So you guys got to get back, got to take control of your Supreme Court, and get them back on track. And then you've got to repeal a whole whackload of stuff. But that's, easier said than done, of course. Crispy is saying Trump should tell Ukraine they are on their own and tell Europe if they get involved, the USA will leave NATO. I know. I wouldn't be surprised if he does say that. He was trying to do that before. Dom is saying, yeah, but coulda, shoulda, woulda. Well, and there's the key. He swore he'd drain the swamp and all sorts of wonderfulness. So, we'll see what happens in his second term, if he ever gets sworn in, because the way I see things going, and I called this years and years ago, I think I was already calling it when he lost the 2020 election. But they cannot allow him to get back in control of the states. He can undo a lot of stuff. He cannot reverse the one world order, but he can undo enough stuff as to be a royal pain in the ass for those who want this new world order. And they can't afford that. They've gone too far. They're on that track. The plan is rolling. So I highly doubt that Trump will make it to his swearing in and into the White House. I really don't think he will. Or if he does make it into the White House, he will be done away with shortly thereafter, putting J.D. Vance in power. And Peggy sent me some stuff that I am still looking into, but just from the brief overview that I've taken already, I can tell JD is definitely not the good guy that just learned his lesson and opened his eyes and saw the truth. He is most definitely working for one of those factions that want global dominion. So there we go. There's Peggy right there. Hi, hun. UN should think twice. USA people will fight back. Well, that's the key. That's what I think they're trying to do now, is they're trying to force the American people into a civil war. The government cannot land the first hit, but if they can force the idiots and sheeple to throw the first punch, then they can come down hard. They can take control. They can take back the weapons. And I know Dom and I, we were discussing the other day about how there's more people and more weapons in the American people than there are American military and police officers. And while that is true, as we just read, that's not the only military that you got to look at. The UN can quite easily be sent in to help quell a civil revolution because they've got the power to. So it's one thing to say that the people have more guns and more people and the numbers are there, and a lot of the U.S. military and police officers would turn and fight with civilians against the tyrannical government, and that's maybe very, very true. But that is not the only military force that the tyrannical government has control of. And it would not be hard to find UN soldiers to come here who have absolutely no ties and no love of America to fight the American people on American soil. So that's my perspective on it. It'll still be a big all-out war, and I don't know who could come out on top. So what we really need to do is we really need to get you folks control of your constitution back and just get rid of the UN altogether. That's my concern. We're fading out of the Trudeau era and we're phasing into the Polyev era. He is not prime minister yet, but he will be. I called that ages ago as well. But the problem with him, he's just a woke light version of Trudeau. Whereas Trudeau works for the WEF and the CCP, Polyev is a UN shill. So all of this tomfoolery with the UN is not going to disappear. Get off my table. Sorry. Come here. Come here, bub. She just wants to be on camera. Come on, love. Up. Come on. Come on. Come on. So either way, Polyev is just going to be doing the bidding of the UN himself. So we're kind of hooped unless we do something super duper major. Jenny says she's with the client, but he's watching you laugh as they're talking about gummies. Good. John is telling Peggy, some of us are about to. Trump and the government are being given one more chance, it seems. Well, that's the key. Is Trump going to be able to do what he wanted to do the last time? Because I know his first time around, his cabinet was just filled with traitors because he didn't know the political peoples. He didn't know the lay of the land there. This time around, he's had 8 years of experience playing the political game. I would like to think he has a better understanding of who he's putting in these positions, and perhaps, just perhaps, he can start to drain the swamp. Again, I'm not going to hold my breath because I really don't think he's going to be able to do anything. I'm not certain that he's going to be able to make it in to the office. I don't think he'll be able to get that far. But we shall see. And in the meantime, for the next few months, I hope we wrap him around in bubble wrap and put him in a bunker somewhere and just let him speak from, tinfoil rooms that no one can track. And then perhaps, just perhaps, we can get him sworn in. So we shall see. Dom is saying hi to Shenny. And, Shenny's saying we had that conversation too. Yeah, I know. It's a conversation that's being had by a lot of people right now. Let's see if we can make it more than just a conversation. Maybe we can get some action behind it. Crispy says they should really leave NATO and the UN anyways. Exactly. And so should Canada. We don't need to have anything to do with them. We really don't. We can't protect ourselves in our country. There she is. We cannot protect ourselves in our country. Why on earth are we putting people out around the world to protect things for NATO and the UN, right? Let's take care of our home first. The same with you guys. Take care of your home, and then we can worry about taking care of other people. But until we can take care of our own people in our own country, there is absolutely no reason why we would be in these sort of things. Dom says, I will eat some beans, not beans some eats later for dinner. The it will be poo-poo. Crispy says, imagine all the cool guns taxpayers could buy if America stopped paying Israel. Oh, Lord. Yes, Peggy, Opus Dei. I'm just barely scratching the surface of that now. And I didn't trust J.D. Vance before, and I really don't trust him now. I have a feeling he is working with the Catholic faction, whereas Trump is, I have a feeling, working with the Israel faction or a specific family. As I said, Trudeau is working with the communist faction, as is Kamala. I think she and Trudeau work for the same team. when we're talking the globalist agenda. And Polyev is just a woke light version. He's just a step off. He's got slightly different bosses, but they're all after the same thing. They're all communist based. So there is now 30 million larger. Oh no. My mouse just ran out of power. Let me find the cord so that I can plug it in, because I can't do anything. It's not there. Of course. Thankfully, it's close enough to reach with my headphones on. Where is that fun? Sorry, love. There we go. There we go. Oh, now it works. Woo-woo. So Dom says, remember, folks, it only took less than 3% of the American colonists to get rid of the king. And Chris B says, now is 30 million larger than any army out there. Yes, but multiple armies put together can still outnumber them. That and the fact that the American people do not have the best weapon technology out there, not by a long shot. So, numbers and weapons are great until you're standing up against a larger, stronger weapon. So, Dom is saying, not to be an ass, but 3% of 350 million is 10.5 million. Sorry, but math. And Chris is laughing. He says, my maths are under the influence. Thanks for the correction. Dom says, there are about 30 million people that are licensed hunters each year. And there are 100 million gun owners with 300 million guns. Almost a third of the population own one or more guns. Chris says, my cats are superstars. Yes. Yes, they are. Piggy says, Opus Dei will remove anyone in their way. And yeah, and that's why I'm saying I'm amending my theory a little bit. They may allow him to be sworn in and take office, only to kill him off at that point so that they've got their man JD in place. So yeah, he may live to be sworn in and step into office, but it won't be for very much longer after that, in my opinion, because they've got plans and Trump's don't support. From my perspective, he is a part of the Israel faction run by a family that shall not be named. But I think in his old age, his love for his country has come out, and he's still all for the globalist agenda, the one world order. But I do believe what he wants is he wants the American Constitution to be the basis for that one world order, which is the absolute opposite to what everyone else going after the one world order wants, because that would give their slaves freedom, and they cannot have that. So they can't afford to let Trump actually be in power for 4 years. He will dismantle so much. It won't be undone completely, not by a long shot, but he can at least cause some issues, which will push their plan further back. And they're starting to get a little antsy, especially since the flu that shall not be named. They're really pushing a lot of things, a lot of bills in different countries, giving the globalists power over our countries. And the people have no idea it's happening. Chris says they're all Ashkenazi Jews. Yeah. That's why I stumbled. I didn't pronounce it right, or I did pronounce it right. Not the way you spelled it, though. Dom is saying to Peggy that might be their plan, but no time in history do we have an annihilation that was absolutely total annihilation. Yes, that style, that exact style that is sitting there right now that I'm not going to say. That would be the one. Even Jericho had survivors, says Dom. That's true. Um, there may very well be survivors, but I don't think there'll be enough. When the time comes, um, you guys got to win it. Because if I don't think if they break you down to just a few, 100,000 survivors or something, I don't think that's going to be enough to ever bring it back again. Right now, you've got the numbers on your side, and you've got the other Western countries which still pay foot service to the idea of freedom, but we just don't have it. We don't know that we don't have it. John McAfee style in a human Faraday cage. Exactly. That's it. Wrap him in bubble wrap, throw him in a bunker somewhere, give him a Faraday cage so he can do his tweets and whatnot. But yeah, we've got to keep him very, very protected for the next few months. Peggy saying, I don't know what you do about it. I am sure. It's yeah, just like I said, the little bit of the surface that I've scratched is pretty scary. They want to complain about Project 2025. It's got nothing on this Opus Dei plan. So Dom is asking to please explain and how that leads to the elimination of all of us. And Peggy's saying their members are in all governments. Power and money is behind the group. I believe the Opus Dei plan is being funded by one of the New World Order factions. Like I said, I really don't know a whole lot about it at all yet. But from what I know of what I found from them and what I know of JD Vance, my assumption is it's the Catholic Church is behind this one. It would be the Catholic faction that would be funding this. Peggy's saying yes, they want JD Vance in. Chris says the J in JD Vance apparently means replacement in one of the numerological codes. Yes, Chris was actually telling me about. Do any of you guys know Montegraph at all? He's the one that Nick Rekieta is in court with because Rekieta said he was a PDF file. He is actually a very, very wise man with lots of knowledge that one person shouldn't have. I can't even begin to scratch the surface on him either. But one of the many things he looks at is the numerology. And Chris is saying he was going deep into the numerology the other day, and JD Vance came up specifically. There's also, I haven't been able to get my hands on it yet, but there was a book written in the late 1780s. I can't remember the title of the book offhand right now, but it was written in the late 1780s. The lead character in the book was named Baron, and his father in the book was the last American president of the American Republic, or last president of the American Republic. And the one that came next got rid of the Constitution, all that. So again, I can't get my hands on the book at the moment. I'm trying. But it's very interesting that all those years, hundreds of years ago, they wrote a book about a president's son named Baron, and that president would be the last standing president of the United States as a republic. So very trippy and everything. I mean, I can't just throw away numerology because there's an awful lot of it that does fit things. So Lord only knows, where everyone fit in. It's just a massive jigsaw puzzle. But oh, okay, I'm looking here. Crispy says Trump's staff was completely Ashkenazi Jew last time. Coincidence? Well, that's the faction he works for, in my opinion. And then Dom says, so do you think the Earth and humans are supposed to go on forever? No. No, no. Doesn't there have to be an endpoint? Yes. Yes, there does. Maybe you just don't want the endpoint to be in your lifetime. Well, if my belief system is true, then I would love to see the endpoint sooner rather than later, because it says that it will only get worse from here, and it's pretty bad now. So if Jesus wants to come right now, lovely. I would be very thankful. If he has to wait until after I am, dead and buried, so be it. But the last few years, it's the first time that I've ever thought that the end days might actually be in my lifetime. So Crispy says, I wonder what bonesman John Kerry crawls out of the woodwork to continue the plan. Yes. Well, that was, and his name was actually mentioned as well. I wouldn't, we have not seen the last of John Kerry, not by a long shot. Dom says, if the Catholics could have ever received power, why did they wait until now? I don't think they were able. I think they were seizing power. I think they, well, to quote the Bible, I believe they took a deadly blow, but were able to repair itself. But they've never had the full power since. That's the thing. From my perspective, the way I see it, there's about 13 to 15 factions worldwide who have been working for hundreds of years now to bring about the one world order, the one world government. I think those 13 to 15 factions have been working together for the most part to achieve that, but each of those factions expect their faction to be the one in control of it all, right? And that means there's going to be infighting. And there already has been a lot of infighting. And I think that's right now at this point, no one faction has the power to take full control, but I think they're getting close. And I think that's why they're going to push to make the U.S. population revolt against its government. I think we're getting closer to that time. Peggy says only part of the Catholic Church, the ultra right. Well, and that's the thing. It's like people saying the Jews. It's not the Jews. It's some people who happen to be Jewish, but it's not all the Jews. It's like it's not all the Catholics. It's some people who happen to be Catholic. It tends to be the elders in the church or state. There's an awful lot of people working in our governments who never get elected and never get fired. We learned that with Fauci, just as an example. He was never elected. He was never fired. He retired with all the little bells and whistles that come along with that retirement. No one ever chose him, and he had huge power. He was doing all sorts of stuff under the guise of your government. That were completely illegal, but because no one knew he existed, in the grand scheme of the people, no one knew to question him, and so he just kept on keeping on. So we need to really thin out our governments. We need to make sure that the people who are in control in the government do have our best in mind when they're passing laws, and we need an overhaul in many of the, if not all of the Western countries. Chris B says the Masons will strike him down like JFK if the Catholics get involved. They would hit Biden, but he's already brain dead. Well, and that's why I'm slightly amending my hypothesis as to what will happen, because of who his vice president is, because it's JD Vance. I can see them working along with the faction that Trump belongs to. I can see them working together, right? Because they want to keep the communist factions out of control. But then once he's sworn in, once he's in the office, he gets knocked off, and bam! Look, now you've got the Catholic faction's main guy in charge of all of the U.S. And with a lot of these things that have been passed without the American public's knowledge, it really wouldn't be too hard to become the tyrant that they say Trump is going to be. You know. Shout out to Monograph. He has very interesting conversations that he does, and he has got a whole ton of information in that head of his. He can connect dots that people had no idea had anything to do with each other. And that's why I'm willing to give his ideas on the numerology at least a chance. Like I'm willing to look at them and see what he's having to say, because he's proven already time and again just how much he knows. He's able to call, just phone call senators and the head of the FBI and just cold call them on their cell phones. He has powers and connections. Yeah, I always take everything that he says and I look into it harder because there's just too much knowledge in that head of his for me to just ignore what he has to say. JFK was Catholic and was sacrificed by the Masons in a temple of the sun, as reviewed by me and Mighty last year. Yep. And it's interesting too, because we were having that discussion. Well, was JFK Catholic? He was Catholic, but there are a lot of people who claim to be Catholics who are not Catholics. They work under the Mystery Babylon premise, or the Illuminati, the Masons, by whatever name, whatever secret society you want. They all are offshoots of the same, the first, the main, which was the Mystery Babylon. And they have oaths, like we read the Jesuit oath in this book. They can claim to be whatever they need to in order to enact the orders given to them by the secret society that they pledge allegiance to. So, like Biden, Catholic, but I highly doubt he was really Catholic. I do not see him, from what he's done, I'd be much more inclined to believe he's a Mason pretending to be a Catholic, you know? But that's just in my opinion. And I forgot to pin it, but we are live streaming to Rumble as well, just in case. YouTube's doesn't like this stuff. John says it's more interesting how people can read a book from hundreds of years ago and think it applies to the present. You know, the Bible and stuff. Well, everything gets taken with a grain of salt. And yes, I am. Cheesy's not here, but my good buddy American Cheese, or sometimes government cheese, something cheese. He and John have brought up another theory, meme something, that is actually, I thought, oh yeah, sure, a modern meme theory, that's great, but it was actually came about long hundreds of years before memes existed as we know them. So like I said, I'm almost finished reading the Bible in its entirety, and once I've done that, there are other esoteric books that I want to go through and learn about, because you have to do your own research. And yes, people can read a book from hundreds of years ago and think it applies to the present, like the Bible. There are an awful lot of people who believe the Bible, and as it stands right now, I believe the Bible. That being said, I am still interested in learning how to at least recognize ancient Hebrew symbols so that I can read the actual Hebrew writings and again research for myself and see just how much of the Bible as we know it now, how closely related it is, and what may or may not have been changed. So I believe the Bible is a real and factual thing. I also am not stupid, and I know humans like to mess with stuff. And until I've read the esoteric works, I can't judge just how accurate and truthful the Bible as I know it is. Right? So Chris is saying, yeah, Digger, let's go Goodwood and end of the world style. Dom says, if you're looking at the Bible for examples, there are 3 examples when God destroyed. Yes. I think there's more than 3. And there are examples, like just as a, let's go. Okay. I thought Goodwood was the name of someone that I was not coming to mind, but that was just my memory playing things. So it wasn't, let's go. That does make a lot more sense. End of the world style. Yes. Yes, yes. There are also things that have got me, like Judas. Judas had to sell out Jesus in order for everything that came next to happen. So is God, is he going to be in heaven? Because he did as God willed him to, Salome, Bathsheba, no, not Bathsheba, King Herod's queen, her daughter Salome danced for King Herod, and it was so good he promised her anything up to half his kingdom, and she asked, as her mother told her to, she asked for the head of John the Baptist, which is why Herod killed John the Baptist. Now, that's horrible, but it had to happen because it was spoken of before by the prophets. So, where does Salome sit with that? She was just obeying her mother, and she never had a chance to. She had never had a chance to know God, right? So, if she has a good heart, is she going to be in heaven or not? Like, there's all sorts of questions. Yeah. The Great Flood, Sodom and Jericho. And there were others. Look at each example of how many good people there were in ratio to how many evil people there were. Yes, there. And again, let's finish reading and then. Tom says God never allowed one group to have total power before he destroyed. It definitely is. It is definitely all the men. The women say so. So yes. The first Catholic president was JFK. The second was Biden. Correct. Dom says, I just do not get it. Either a person believes the Bible is the unadulterated, inspired word of God, or they don't. Can't pick and choose. If you pick and choose, you do not believe it. Well, I believe the ideas and stories within, I believe a lot of it is unadulterated, inspired word of God. And I believe that because we can find different versions of the texts from all time periods. Some of the oldest and the newest, we can find copies of these texts, and the texts, words, and meaning have not changed. That being said, how hard is it for evil to prosper when good closes their eyes. Um, I believe the ideas and the overarching premise are true, but I need to read all of the esoteric books so that I can confirm or deny for myself that the Bible is completely unadulterated, inspired word. So right now I'm working under the premise that it is all, but I can't know for myself for sure until I read all the rest of it, right? Because how do I know the people who chose which books made it into the Bible weren't evil and purposefully denying um, a specifically important to God book and not allowing it to be put into the Bible as we know it? There's a lot of ways for evil to slowly poison the well, and so right now I'm operating from the understanding that the Bible is true and inspired until I read the esoteric writings, and then I will have more information so I can make a more knowledgeable decision on what I agree with or what I believe to be true. Dom says the Egyptians put memes on clay tablets in cuneiform. Yes, and some could. I mean, they called it graffiti that is found all over Rome and Pompeii and whatnot. But it could be. I mean, there were cartoons, there were memes written on Roman walls that are still there to to this day. But yeah, I didn't realize there was a whole meme theory behind it. So that's another avenue I've got to go down at some point somewhere. And Tom says, walk like an Egyptian. And I can fix the dancing girls. Well, that's just it with Salome. Like, she was doing what her mom told her. So she was honoring her mother and her father, right? If she doesn't know what she's doing is wrong, God says he won't punish her for it, right? Or he won't punish her to the same extent as he would punish someone who knew that it was wrong and did it anyway. And Peggy says Judas could have asked for forgiveness like Peter, but he did not. Yes. Well, and see, there's the thing, like, there's so many things with Judas. What if, because it had to happen so that Jesus could be killed on the cross, so he could be resurrected in 3 days? Perhaps Judas was forgiven for that, but then he lost his entry into heaven because he then committed suicide for his actions. So does he get forgiven for the one, but then X'd out for the other? Or there's so many things that I just don't understand, and a lot of us don't understand, and we won't understand until the end happens, and we can all find out once and for all who was right, who was wrong, and just how far apart the two were. Yes, Judas self-deleted before repentance and forgiveness. And that's why I question anyone that self-deletes can go to paradise. Did they repent? Did they repent right before? Well, and again, that brings into question, because God says he will not punish those who do wrong unwittingly as much as he will punish those that do wrong on purpose. So in the case of Judas, he knew that self-deletion was wrong, so he wouldn't get forgiven. But who's to say the 10 or 12-year-old who does self-deletion, who has never known God, never heard his word, is God just going to automatically X them out of heaven? Well, no, because he judges those who do not know him on their hearts. And so, a 10-year-old with a good heart who chooses self-deletion will get judged less harshly. So does that mean that now God will let them in? I don't know. I really don't know. I'm learning. And I can just go off of what I understand so far. So that's a big, big question. Dom says, I just questioned it as far as the steps to salvation. Only God knows for sure. Exactly. Only God knows for sure. Hello, Cynthia. Good to see ya. Peggy says, we have free will just like the fallen angels. Do the fallen angels have free will? I thought angels were completely separate and completely different from humans. Like the angels do not have to abide by the Ten Commandments. Those are not laws for angels. Those are laws for humans. The angels might very well have other commandments to follow, but they don't need to follow ours. So I don't know if they have free will or not. That's a very good question. Dom says, fallen angels, damn drunk angels. I know, right? They're partying with Lucifer. They thought, oh, this is great. We'll go down and party on this earth for a while. Little did they realize that they're hoops. Dom says, Cynthia, send some young muscle that will obey orders. Lucifer had free will. Well, I guess he did. Because he had to have free will in order to have the ability to be selfish, right? And he had to be able to be selfish in order to want to put himself above God. So you're right. Okay, so I guess yes. Then angels would have, yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So yeah, angels. There's Peggy. Angels had free will. So I guess I guess they do have free will. That makes sense. And see, it's the reasoning out of everything. It's what we have to do. That's what the author of Behold a Pale Horse lived by. Do your own research. Do not take what I or he or anyone else says as the gospel until you've done your own research, and you can decide for yourself. So as far as my research has taken me so far, I believe the Bible in its entirety is inspired word. I may change my mind when I start reading the esoteric and learning more about the various types of angels and whatnot. Who knows? I may change my mind or just amend my understanding. But as I stand right this moment, I'm taking the whole Bible as inspired word of God. Cynthia is saying muscles without brains are a little hard to come by. Yes, as as our brains, with or without muscles, brains are very hard to come by these days. Dom says the thing about angels we do not understand is they have already experienced God, and we can't imagine giving that up. No doubt. No doubt. And Dom says, no, Cynthia, they need brains to decide to follow orders. The no-brainers do whatever they feel like. Fair enough. Yeah, so where are we? We're at movie City of Angels. Which one is that? That's not, no, Philadelphia is the one with Tom Hanks with AIDS. City of Angels. Okay, no, now I'm thinking Hearts in Atlantis. That was Stephen King. I don't know. I think I might have seen it. It sounds definitely familiar. I've probably seen it and just don't remember because that's how my brain works. Makes it nice rewatching movies because I forget what happened in them. So it's a brand new movie all over again. City of Angels is with Nick Cage. Oh, okay. Well, I might not have seen it then. I really don't like Nicolas Cage. I'm not a big fan of his, so I don't go out of my way to see stuff that he's in. I have seen him in quite a few things, but he falls in love with Meg Ryan. Now that sounds like you had mail. You've got mail. That's a whole nother one. But on that note, we've only been going an hour and a half. Let's see here. Okay, yeah, no, chapter 14 is a very, very long one. Or at least a fair amount of reading. So I'm just going to call it here today. We can start chapter 14 next week. It's called A Proposed Constitutional Model for the New States of America. Prepared over a 10-year period by the Center for Democratic Studies of Santa Barbara, California. And a total cost to the United States taxpayers of over $25 million. So we will cover that next week. Fun! It's an outstanding movie and an interesting concept of angels of God. Okay. Okay, I will have to go and look for it. For sure. But yeah, in the meantime, it's going to be a shorty today. And thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Bye, you guys.
Topics change from day to day. Science, art, or history's play. No path too twisted, no trail too thin. She dives right in where to begin. Nothing's too obscure. She'll dig and take a spirit so pure. From ancient lore to future dreams, every question finds its gleam.